we meet again. Hi guys, welcome back, or welcome to if you are new here. My name is Logan Cox, and today I'm going to be sharing my 3 top tips, the 3 tips that helped me get out of a reader slump earlier this year. I mentioned this briefly in my last video, but I went through a couple month-long reading slump where I just could not be bothered. I didn't want to pick up any book. I didn't feel like it. I didn't have that motivation or that desire to read. But after a couple months, I did have a desire and I wanted to read, yet I still couldn't seem to pick up a book. I still couldn't be bothered to do it, even though I had that will and had that desire to. So I'm gonna make this pretty short and sweet. I have 3 big tips that I think really helped me and can really help you. And I'll also share some kind of recommendations, book genres, and things like that. One thing I will mention is I definitely think that this is for the people who are in that space where they want to be reading more, they want to start enjoying books again, but for some reason they still can't, or they just can't be bothered. I've used that 3 times now in like a minute. But that's kind of the space that I'm going to be talking about, because I do think that if you're in a reading slump and you've been reading for a long time and you've been reading a lot, sometimes it's good to give yourself that space and give yourself that time that's necessary. Notes in hand, let's get right into this. My first and number 1 recommendation is audiobooks. This, I don't even know if it still does, but for a while, audiobooks had this stigma around them. Yes, they count. Yes, you can enjoy them. There's none of that, they're not real books here. No, we're not doing it. Audiobooks are a great tool to help you get back in after a reading slump. They are more accessible than physical books. And I say that in terms of you can read them kind of anywhere. You can read them on a walk. You can read them while you're doing laundry. You can read them before you go to bed at night. You can read them scrolling through Instagram, what have you. There is a lot more options for when and how you can intake all of this information from the book, where for physical books, you really do have to just pick up the physical book, and just kind of find the time to do that one thing. So I find that audiobooks are a really easy way to get back into things with kind of a low effort pull from you. And also, the same way that your reading speed is different from other people's, your listening speed can also be different. You can digest more of an audiobook quicker. You can have it at 1.25 speed, 1.5 if you're really after it. It's another way that you can kind of get a book quickly under your belt. And I say get a book quickly under your belt because sometimes the first book is the hardest, and it's about getting that validation again, getting that thrill from finishing a book and reading a book. Sometimes that's all it takes to get out of a reading slump, is to get that first book out of the way and just kind of easy breezing from there. I have a couple of book genres that I would recommend. These are personally what I found to be the most helpful, because I find these types of audiobooks really engaging, really fast-paced, and just like so easily digestible. So my number 1 is thrillers/suspense. This is my favorite type of audiobook to listen to. I don't even really buy physical thrillers anymore because I love listening to them as audiobooks. I just find it so eerie and spooky, and just like it really has me on the edge of my seat, so engaged. And so it's like the only thing I listen to when I'm driving is thriller books, especially if I'm on like a long trip. Wow, they're amazing. Kind of on the same line, mysteries, thrillers, they kind of go hand in hand. I find that they're so engaging because you're thinking, who done it? Like, what's going on? What's the backstory? You're trying to piece all of these puzzle pieces together, and it gets you really engaged and excited in the storyline. There's just something about the dark element about these types of books that really just captures you, it captures your attention, and that's exactly what we want from a book when we're coming out of a reading slump. Is we want something that's going to grab us, keep us, and then we're finished. There we go. My last audiobook recommendation is memoirs. I love listening to memoirs, especially when they are narrated by the author. Think Michelle Obama's Becoming, Matthew McConaughey's Green Lights, Barack Obama, The Promised Land, Yearbook, Seth Rogen. They're so much fun to listen to, and to me it just feels like I am sitting there looking up, listening to these authors tell me a story, and it's so much fun, it's so engaging, and I love it, and I think it's such an experience. That rounds out my first tip. Tip number 2 is short stories. I mentioned this briefly on my last video, but short stories are a great way to re-engage and get back into reading. I find this because of 2 reasons. One is they're not as intimidating as a real book. With short stories, they're easily digestible and you can kind of just pick up and drop the book whenever you see fit. A couple pages here and there, and you're done with a complete story. And 2, it leads me perfectly, is I have, at least for me, I feel so accomplished when I finished a book. I feel so great, and I'm like, huzzah, like, I feel, it gives me like a runner's high, a reader's high. So I think that the same goes for short stories. It's kind of what you need to just like make you feel good and make books feel fun again, instead of a chore, instead of I have to read because I need to get X amount more done for my reading challenge for the end of the year. It can make them feel fun again because you get excited every time you finish a story. So I think that short stories, you can also include like poetry, short story books. You can include self-development where each chapter is a different tip. That's kind of like the chapter in and of itself is one concept that is, you can take with you, you can mull it over for a couple of days, go to a next chapter. And every time you can feel good and happy about the accomplishment that you've done of reading that chapter or finishing that short story, getting through a couple bits of poetry, what have you. Okay, checked my list, and that is it for short stories. So moving right along to my third tip, and that is quick reads. It's kind of a catch-all phrase. I think rom-coms, I think fantasy, I think this also includes like short stories, things like that. Books that you read quicker than maybe other denser books are a great way to dip your toes back in. I find rom-coms pretty fun and quick and easy. I also find that sometimes fantasy, not like a Dune type of fantasy book, but some fantasy books, some stories like that can be really quick and easy, no matter if they're like 600 pages long. And that's kind of what I did do. 2 big series that I got into was Patricia Briggs's, Mercy Thompson. My friend had recommended it, and I read like 3 of those books in like a week when I was first coming out of my reader slump, because they really are just like so quick and easy and fun, and you can just get through them, at least for me personally, very fast. Another one that I kind of actually won't speak too much because I didn't actually enjoy it, but I still read all 3 of them, were the Jennifer Armentrout books, the Blood and Ash. They're all over Book Talk. I didn't love them, but they were so easy and quick to read. I could finish like a 500-page book in 2 days. And it kind of all goes back to I felt accomplished, I felt great. I didn't feel like I was falling behind, all of these things. And the big picture with all of this is all of these tips helped me to just like feel happy and excited to be reading again, and that's the whole point. Those are my 3 major tips that helped me get out of my reader slump earlier this year, and that I think can be very helpful for anyone who's experiencing this. But again, you know, give yourself the time, give yourself the space that you need. To each their own though, and you know, you're not on a time clock with anybody else. You shouldn't be comparing yourself to anybody else. This is just tips to help you get out of a reader slump because you want to feel excited about books again, and because you want to hear all these stories, but you just don't know how to get over that initial step and how to get back into it. I hope this was helpful for you. I know it kind of can suck being in a reader slump and kind of sometimes feel like you're just like twiddling your fingers. Isn't that a phrase? But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, thumbs up. If you also have any recommendations, I'd love to hear about them in the comments because, you know, you can never have too many tips and tricks. I hope you have a great rest of your day, morning, afternoon, evening, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.